When I first met Olivia, she had this warmth about her that could light up an entire room. She wasn't loud or attention-seeking, just quietly magnetic. Her laugh would pull you in, her voice had this soothing rhythm, and when she looked at you, it felt like she actually saw you. I used to think that's what love was supposed to feel like, being seen, being wanted, being chosen every single day. For the first 2 years of our marriage, it was exactly that. We had passion, affection, endless conversations that went well past midnight. We couldn't keep our hands off each other. It felt real. It felt permanent. But somewhere after year 3, the air started to change. I didn't notice it at first. Affection became occasional, almost scheduled. A kiss on the cheek before work. A polite hug before bed. The kind of gestures you'd give a friend, not a partner. I'd tell myself it was just stress. She had her job, her family issues, her mood swings. Everyone goes through phases, right? I waited, hoping things would return to how they were. They didn't. When I tried to talk about it, she'd deflect. Not tonight, I'm tired. Can we not turn everything into drama? It became her pattern, pushing the problem aside while expecting me to stay patient. I did, for months. Then months became years. Affection turned into a transaction. Once, maybe twice a month, if things were calm, if I didn't press too hard, if she was in the mood. Every time it happened, I could feel how forced it was, like she was giving in just to keep me quiet. It stopped feeling like love, it felt like obligation. And that destroyed me more than any argument could have. I started withdrawing without realizing it. Little things, like staying late at work even when I didn't have to. Sitting in my car in silence before going inside. I'd scroll through photos from our early days and feel like I was looking at strangers. I missed her. Not the person sleeping next to me, but the one who used to run into my arms after work. The woman who'd text me just to say she missed me. One night, I finally said it, calmly, not out of anger. Liv, it feels like we're roommates. Not a couple. She sighed, not even looking up from her phone. Daniel, we can't be all over each other forever. That's just how marriages are. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. To her, this coldness was normal. To me, it was a quiet death. I started questioning everything. Maybe I was expecting too much. Maybe real love wasn't meant to stay passionate forever. But deep down, I knew this wasn't normal. There's a difference between comfort and neglect. One brings peace, the other erases you slowly. Weeks later, it reached the breaking point. We were sitting at dinner, eating in near silence. I asked her, softly, "Do you even want me anymore?" She looked up, expressionless. "Daniel, affection once a month is enough. You're acting like a teenager who needs constant attention." That line echoed in my head long after she said it. Affection once a month. Like rationing emotion was a reasonable thing to do. I realized then how far apart we'd grown. It wasn't just about physical touch, it was about connection, intimacy, care. I wasn't her partner anymore. I was a placeholder. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. For the first time in my life, I felt truly unwanted. There's a loneliness that comes from being single, but the one that comes from lying next to someone who doesn't want you, that's something else entirely. I decided I couldn't live like that anymore. The next morning, over coffee, I said it quietly but clearly. I want a divorce. Her spoon froze mid-stir. "What?" she said, half laughing like it was a bad joke. "I'm serious, Liv. I can't keep doing this. I feel invisible." She blinked, caught off guard. "You're overreacting. Every couple slows down eventually. It doesn't mean we're broken." I shook my head. "It's not about slowing down. It's about giving up." She didn't respond right away. Just stared into her cup as if the right words might appear there. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled slightly. "Daniel, calm down. I didn't mean it like that. I need you." Those 3 words, "I need you," should have felt comforting. But they didn't. Because now, I couldn't tell if she needed me as a husband, or just as someone who kept the life she was comfortable in from falling apart. For a long moment, we sat there in silence, both of us realizing this wasn't a temporary argument. Something fundamental had cracked, and no amount of pretending would fix it. And as she looked at me with that sudden spark of fear, I wondered, why did it take the threat of losing me for her to finally need me? Olivia's eyes softened, but it wasn't love I saw there, it was panic. Not the panic of losing a soulmate, but the fear of losing control over a life she had carefully arranged. I sat across from her, unmoved, waiting for something real to surface. But all she said was, "We can fix this, Daniel. Don't throw everything away over intimacy." I almost laughed. Everything? Everything had already been slipping through my fingers for years, while she watched in silence. It wasn't about intimacy anymore, it was about feeling wanted, respected, seen. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized I didn't recognize her anymore. She reached across the table, her hand trembling. You're tired, that's all. Let's go on a trip. Maybe we just need time away from everything. A trip. Another bandage for a wound that had already turned to scar tissue. No, Olivia, I said, voice steady. We don't need a vacation. We need honesty. Her hand dropped. You're serious about this, aren't you? I nodded. She stood up, pacing the room like someone trapped. So that's it? You just give up? I exhaled slowly. I gave everything before I gave up. You stopped noticing. She didn't have an answer for that. The silence between us was suffocating. It wasn't angry silence, it was the silence of finality. The next few days passed like a fog. She tried to act normal, cooking dinner, asking about my day, brushing her fingers against my arm like muscle memory. But everything felt rehearsed, a performance too late in the play. I watched her trying, and part of me wanted to believe it could change. But another part of me, the one that had been starving for years, knew better. One evening, she came into the living room wearing that same blue sweater she'd worn on our first date. She sat beside me, close enough for her perfume to reach me, the one that used to make my pulse race. Do you remember the night we met? She asked softly. I nodded, unsure where she was going with this. You told me I made you feel alive, she said. And I told you that you made me feel safe. I don't know when we lost that. Her voice cracked on the last word. For a moment, the mask fell away, and I saw her vulnerability, the same woman who used to reach for me in her sleep. But it wasn't enough anymore. Love without consistency turns into nostalgia, and nostalgia can't rebuild what's been ignored too long. I remember, I said gently. And I also remember when we stopped trying. She wiped her eyes. So that's it? You'll just walk away? I stood, looking down at her. You walked away first, Liv. You just did it slowly enough to convince yourself you hadn't. Her face crumpled. I wanted to hold her, to tell her it would all be okay, but I'd be lying. Sometimes, loving someone means accepting that they're not meant to come with you to the next chapter. That night, I slept in the guest room. I could hear her crying quietly through the wall. It wasn't victory I felt, it was grief. Grief for the years I spent waiting for a version of her that no longer existed. Grief for the man I became, quiet, invisible, surviving on the memory of who we used to be. The next morning, I packed my things. She didn't try to stop me. She just stood by the doorway, arms wrapped around herself, watching as I folded shirts into a suitcase that once carried us on vacations. When I zipped it shut, she whispered, You really don't love me anymore, do you? I paused. I think love is still there, Liv. It just doesn't have anywhere to live anymore. Her tears came faster then, but I couldn't stay to comfort her. Because every time I did, I ended up comforting her at the cost of myself. And I was done being the only one fighting for us. As I walked to my car, I half expected her to run after me, like in the movies, apologies, promises, last-minute realizations. But real life isn't a movie. Real love, once starved, doesn't roar back to life because someone finally gets scared. It fades quietly, like a candle that's run out of air. Driving away, I felt something strange, relief. Not the kind that comes from revenge or anger, but the kind that comes from reclaiming your worth. For the first time in years, I wasn't begging for affection or attention. I was giving it to myself. Months passed. The papers came, and I signed them without hesitation. People talk about closure like it's an event, a single day when the heart finally exhales. But closure, I learned, is quieter than that. It's waking up one morning and realizing you didn't think about her first thing. It's hearing her name and feeling peace instead of pain. Sometimes, when I drive past the old cafe we used to visit, I still think of her. Of us. Of how we started as two people desperate to hold on to something real. Maybe we did love each other once, deeply even. But love without effort is just a story waiting for its ending. And ours had arrived long before I ever said the words out loud. Still, I'm grateful, for the lesson, for the heartbreak, for the reminder that love isn't about how long someone stays. It's about whether they show up fully while they're there. Olivia taught me that affection can't be scheduled, and connection can't be negotiated. And when I finally walked away, I realized something she never did. Sometimes, leaving isn't giving up. It's choosing to live again.